Welcome everyone to this short introduction of Beyond the Rift, a Perdition's Mouth card game. My name is Nikolas, I'm the designer, and I'm going to show you some of the basic concepts and mechanics of Beyond the Rift. Small disclaimer before we start, all of this are prototype components. These are used for playtesting and to represent how the game will play, but none of these will be the final components of the game, except this little deck here that you might recognize if you've played Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift already. So Beyond the Rift, 1 to 4 players plays 1 to 4 heroes that take on a series of scenarios that are connected into small mini-campaigns. Each mini-campaign is playable in one evening, taking between 3 and 4 hours. And here I am showing you one of the introductory scenarios called Into the Abyss. In the scenario Into the Abyss, you find yourself trapped in a dungeon and you want to escape. You do that by revealing these terrain cards here, which represent different parts of the environment that might hinder or help you. We see things like rubble that will make things a little bit more difficult to engage enemies and to move around, and things like doors that block your path and that you have to defeat to move forward. Blocking our way, we have a series of different enemies. We have some acolytes, we have some guards, and coming from the enemy deck during the game, there will be things such as bone worms and rotigas and other creatures. So on your turn, a hero will have between 7 and 4 cards depending on the player count. In a 1-player game you start with 7, that is what I'm showing here. In a 2-player game each player would have 6, in a 3-player game each player would have 5, and in a 4-player game each player would have 4. There are a few basic actions presented on these cards. We have attack cards that allow you to perform attack actions, attacking enemies and hopefully killing them. You have defense actions allowing you to defend yourself against enemy attacks. You have action point actions allowing you to get more action points, more on that in a second. And we have special ability cards such as Bastian's Tactician, his Provoke, or his Quick Cleave action. These will be unique to each hero, and each deck also is unique to each hero. So Bastian is now playing with his unique hero deck that is that consists of cards that only he has. So during your turn you can then play these cards, and playing these cards you have to pay the action point cost here at the top. Action points are here represented by this die, but the final game will have a track where you can push a cube up and forth to count these. And Bastian will start with 6, as according to his hero card here. And there are a few different things you can do with action points. There are a few sort of basic actions here you can do at any point without playing any cards. One of them is paying 3 action points to draw a card from your hero deck, which would be here, which is a 26 card deck. You can pay 1 and discard 1 card from your hand to draw another card. It's a cheaper way to get deeper into your deck, but you're not actually gaining any cards. You can discard a card to receive 1 action points. In a pinch you can get some more action points to do other actions that way. Or if you're being attacked, you can convert action points into defense value in case you have some excess action points after your turn. The other thing you can do, which is the more important thing, is to actually pay for action cards. So let's say, for example, I would like to perform an attack action. I could then pay the cost here at the top left. The leftmost cost in an attack action is the cost you pay to initiate an attack, and the rightmost is the one that you pay if you want to add to that attack. So let's say, for example, I want to perform this attack action here. I would first spend 1 to make it an attack of 5. But I could then also play another attack card here using the top half of the card as an attack action as opposed to the bottom part for a defense action. And in this case I would pay 0 because this is the second attack card I play. I can now also play a third attack card, again playing the rightmost cost if I want, but I believe in this case an attack of 8 is likely going to be enough. So to see if you're able to perform an attack, you first have to check the attack card's range. If you're playing several attack cards, you take the lowest ranged among them. But in this case, all attack cards have a range of 1. There are a few different zones in the game. The basic zone here in the middle, where these enemies starts, is the quest area. The quest area is always in range 2, which would be too far away for the attack cards I just showed you by Bastian, who both have range 1. The area in front of the hero is the hero area, and if you're playing with several players, then each hero would have their own hero area, and another hero's hero area is also within range 2. To bring an enemy into range 1 of you, you can pay their action point cost here at the bottom left to actually move them into your hero area. So for example, I could pay 2 action points to have this acolyte move in front of me, bringing it into range 1. So let's see how attacks work and how damage is dealt. I can now play an attack card to try to attack this acolyte, since it is within range 1 and my attack allows me to perform attacks at range 1. I would now, let's say, pay 1 action point to perform an attack of 5, and in this case, to be sure I hit, I would then also play another attack card, paying 0, which is the rightmost cost. This adds up to an attack of 8. I will compare this to the enemy's defense value here at the bottom. The defense value in this case is 1, but enemies always get 1 response card to that. Anyone who has played Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift will recognize these response cards as the modifier to attacks and defense actions of enemies. I will here draw it. These go from -1 to +5. I get a +2. 1 + 2 is 3. And now we check who has the highest combined value. In this case, I have an attack of 8. The acolyte has a defense of 3, so my attack is successful. Had there been a tie, the acolyte would have won, since the acolyte is the defender, and defenders always win ties. This would mean I deal 1 damage, since that is Bastian's base damage value. Each enemy will have their own damage value, many of them also just dealing 1, but the guard here, for example, deals 1 damage and 1 fatigue. More on that in a second. Once damage is dealt, I draw 1 wound card, and this has 2 different spaces on it. The bottom space here will be used when enemies take damage. In this case, I will slide it in under the enemy card, and this will now modify the values of this enemy. So as you can see, it will get -0 to its engagement value here, its action point value. This is what it would cost for me to move the enemy around. In this case, that is not modified. This is the enemy's range. Once it performs action and it needs range, this will be unmodified. Its attack is unmodified. Its defense is now -1, 1 minus 2 being -1, and its life total is 0. This would mean that the enemy is instantly destroyed, so all of these things are currently not doing anything because I just remove the wound card and the enemy from the game. So let's now move on to the enemy phase. After the hero phase, the heroes will decide at any point they want to stop playing. They can still have some cards and action points left if they so wish, and then they decide at some point just to move on to the enemy phase. In the enemy phase, I will draw 1 response card, and this I will compare to a flowchart which will be unique for each scenario, and this will tell me what the enemies do. The enemies will have a series of actions. Acolytes will very often just try to escape, so if they're in the quest area, they will be removed from the game and then something bad will happen. In this specific scenario, there will be a summoner added to the enemy deck, which is a much more powerful enemy than we would otherwise see in this scenario, which would then obviously be a very bad thing, considering that summoner would be replacing an acolyte that's very weak. Guards will generally attack, and I will now discuss how attacking works when the enemies do them. So let's now say that the guard's action on this enemy phase would be an attack action. Then we would first see if the guard has range to anyone that the guard can attack. The guard has a range value of 2. Range works for the enemies just like it does for the heroes. So if they are in the quest area, they are at range 2 from the heroes. If the enemy would be standing in front of me, it would be in range 1 of me. So in this case, since the guard's range value is unmodified, it doesn't actually matter where the guard is standing, it will have range to me. It will now perform an attack, and I will then check the guard's attack value, which in this case is 2. But again, we will modify that by a response card. So before drawing the response card, which is always the last thing you do during a attack action by an enemy, you will have to spend cards or action points to defend yourself. A hero's base defense is 0. So if I don't play anything, I just have to hope that the combined value of the attack and the response card will be 0, because then I would still defend myself successfully since I'm the defender. But I don't want to take that risk, so I will choose to spend some cards. In this case, I have 2 options. I could play this card for its lower action, paying 1 action point and gaining 5 defense. Or I could pay this card, paying 0 action points and gaining 6 defense. I can also choose to spend action points. In this case, I would still have 2 left from my previous hero phase. And here I could then spend those for 1 defense each. Let's say I want to keep this attack card, because I might want to use that at some future point. And I play this one, paying no action points to gain 6 defense. Now I have to compare 2 plus a response card to 6. In this case, I draw a +2, which means that the attack has a value of 4, and I defend with a value of 6, meaning I now defended successfully. Had this not been the case, had the attack value been higher than my defense value, I would have received damage from the enemy. The enemy's damage is seen here, and that would in here be 1 wound and 1 fatigue card. Wounds we've seen earlier. I will now draw another one and show you how it looks like for the heroes. So this bottom part, as I said, is only used for the enemies once they receive damage and you slide it in under. But when a hero receives damage from an enemy, you look at the middle part here. This is a dislocated shoulder. It has a range of 2. It costs 0 action points to play, but it actually gives me -3 defense. This card goes straight into my hand and will now clog my hand until I actually play it for its negative effect, at which point I will be able to discard it. I also draw a fatigue card. The fatigue cards are all the same. They have the same stats. They have a range of 1. They cost nothing, and they provide you -1 defense, or -2 attack, or -2 action points. There's also a stat line down here in case you would inflict fatigue on any of the enemies. These cards, when played, are not put in the discard, but are actually removed again from the game. So these are a lot less negative than the wound cards. So how do you win or lose in this game? So each scenario will tell you how to win it, and most scenarios will have their own unique loss condition. In this example of the Into the Abyss scenario, the goal of the game is to get through this terrain deck, which will be a little bit of a different size depending on player count, but that would go over something like 4 to 6 rounds. And then find the exit card, which will allow you to exit the dungeon and then escape and move on to the next scenario. There is no special loss condition in this one, but other scenarios will obviously have those, such as there is a threat value which is being tracked and that is being raised by different conditions, say certain enemies being in play or certain enemies being in different zones. There can be terrain cards that are revealed that needs to be removed instantly so that the threat value doesn't go up, or so that you don't straight lose the scenario. The way that you can always lose a scenario is by dying. And what you do at the beginning of the round is that you always draw up to your full hand size, meaning you actually draw the amount of card that is your hand size. So let's say I start my second round of the game with these 3 cards in hand. I would now draw 7 cards since I'm playing solo. And now I will have more than 7 cards in hand, meaning I have to discard down to 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have discard 3 cards. I'm at this point not allowed to discard my wounds or my fatigue cards, meaning I have to discard 3 non-wound, non-fatigue cards. If I at this point would have 7 cards that are all wounds or fatigue cards, let's say it would look like this, another 2, I would instantly die. This obviously seems like maybe an extreme case since we're getting so little damage from these enemies, but later on in the game you might find yourself facing several enemies that attack you over several turns, and then you play wound cards and those get shuffled back into your deck at some point, because when you run out of your deck you have to reshuffle your discard. And at some point this can very realistically happen that you find yourself in a position where you have just wound and fatigue cards in hand and you find yourself dying that way. Thanks everyone for watching. These were some of the basic gameplay concepts and sort of the gameplay of Beyond the Rift, a Perdition's Mouth card game, coming to Kickstarter in 2021. Keep an eye on either the Dragon Dawn Production homepage, the Dragon Dawn Production Twitter, the Dragon Dawn Production Facebook page, or reach out to me straight under @PhilipUbicDick on Twitter to get in touch with me. If you would like to see more of these type of videos or just some gameplay videos of me actually playing through a full scenario of the game, leave a comment down below, like this video, and hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching.